All right, thanks for coming, everyone. We'll get started here. My name is Jason Horner. I'm the president of R-Carlson Corporation. We're a local millwork company here in Minneapolis. We've been here since 1891. We were fortunate enough to do a lot of the woodwork that's in this building we're in right here. All the capital, the benches and podiums and stuff like that. It was all woodwork that we completed in the last few years. For decades, we've been doing ballistic protection for courtrooms, police stations, high net worth single family homes. A few years ago, we decided that it was time to bring it a little more modularly and out to kind of more of the masses. So we set out on a process to make our system modular. And basically, it's very easy to install, can go up in a very short period of time, and can protect the schools now. That's one of the big components of our system. We recently had it patented, and then we set out to figure out how to put it up, and then the events at Parkland happened, and we decided that this could really come in play right now and help the schools. So what you look at here, a lot of the things you've seen out in the market make schools look like prisons. They're metal, they're cold, they're not glass. You'll see things like this. This is a sample that's actually been shot. This was shot 9 times. This is what it would look like new. It's warm, it's inviting, it's not cold. The average person actually won't even know that it's anything special. So it's very easy to handle and is incredibly resistant to attack. Being a Minnesota company, we want to focus in on Minnesota being a leader in the solution to this problem. And we're thankful for the support from the legislatures that are here with us today. With that, I'd like to quickly introduce Ryan Schmidt. He's one of the members of our team, and he's got some comments on how local law enforcement perceives the product.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Schmidt. Thank you for having me here. I've had several conversations within the Wounded Warrior Project as well as local law enforcement. As a retired veteran myself and mentor with the Wounded Warrior Project, we had several conversations about employing veterans through the Warrior to Work program, through Safe Schools, Safe Kids, as this continues to grow. Through local conversations with law enforcement, I have showed them products, samples of what we are doing with Safe Schools, Safe Kids. It's been well received, and looking forward to installing it into schools. I'm going to turn it back over to Jason at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Thank you for service. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator Carla Nelson. She's been part of our early discussions on how to get this funded and how to move this forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, good morning. As the chairwoman of the Senate Education Finance Committee, we know that this legislature has been laser focused on school safety. And we know that school safety is paramount. It's paramount that our kids are safe. It's paramount that our parents know their kids are in a safe facility. And it's paramount that our staff as well knows that their facility is safe. And so you know that I've authored the Safe and Secure Schools Act, which is laser focused on how do we make the school facilities safer for our kids. One of those key ways, of course, is as law enforcement told me when I called them, when I called leaders on February 15th, following the tragic shooting, what do we need to do? And they all said the same thing. You need to harden the target. We don't like to think about schools as targets, but clearly they have become targets. It's essential that our school districts have the funding to be able to make those buildings, their campuses, safe. That's why I'm glad to be here today. That's why we've focused on safe and secure schools, both on hardening that target and also making sure that we have the staff in those buildings that can help prevent and deter these type of tragedies.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Jen Loon. She's also been critical in helping us get some funding set up for this.
She's not here.
She's still not here. Perfect. Okay. So in her place, then, we're actually going to show you a quick video of how the system works. Are we up and live there? This is very quick, so if you have any questions as we go through, I can pause it. So what you'll see here is, in theory, an active shooter approaching a building. And one of our most common sense objectives here is to stop the person right at the front of the building. So one of our first level of deterrent is to stop them in the vestibule and consume minutes of time while they engage targets. In theory, defeating the active shooter right there at the first entry to the building and keeping everybody else behind the building safe. Next, we'll go to Senator Eric Pratt. He's on the E12 Policy Committee.
Thanks, Jason. As you said, my name is Eric Pratt. I represent Scott County, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I've spent 12 years on a local school board, and I know how hard our local districts are working to make their schools safe. And I think that's why it's so important and so exciting to see products like this, the innovation, that's coming out of our Minnesota companies, and especially with Jason's focus on making sure that we do get this type of product in our schools, the research they've done. It's these types of ideas that will really help us make our schools safer. And I know our local school districts have been making progress over the years, but it's one of those things where you're never done continuing to modify and revise as technology changes, as we see new incidents happen. We're always seem to be in a reactive mode, but very proud to be here and helping to promote ideas that are more proactive than reactive. So thank you.
Next, Representative Sarah Anderson.
Hi. When I look at this product, when it was first showed to me, I immediately thought of my son in his elementary school and the sense of peace and knowing that he would be protected by something that he would not know what it was, or that it was something that was meant to protect him. And I think that all parents think about that when they release their child. They're releasing them to people to take care of them during those hours at school. And I just appreciate that, again, Minnesota is a place of innovation, and here we're coming forward with a piece of innovation that can protect our kids and also be used in other formats as well. And I want to say thank you to Jason and his company, that they are forward-thinking and looking out for the state of Minnesota and kids everywhere. So just appreciate that.
Thank you. Next, Representative Dean Erdahl.
So that's why he's upstairs.
Okay.
We're in the house.
Bonding at the end of the year.
Then lastly, Tony Albright.
Well, good morning, Representative Tony Albright. Oftentimes you think about technology and how technology has been used in schools, and oftentimes you think about it from a learning perspective. You think about it in terms of laptops, you think about it the whiteboards and whatnot. But really what this company has brought forward is a technology that keeps our kids safe. And I can't think of a better opportunity to use technology for the benefit of the little ones, not so little, up to senior high, who go off to school to be taught and to learn. But this is a way for technology to be used, and I congratulate the company bringing forward this. It's a homegrown institution, it's a homegrown organization that is striking out on a very visionary platform that can bring safety to our schools through technology. So thank you very much.
So with that, are there any questions or any other comments legislators would like to make?
How much would this cost to install, and for instance, what you showed in the video? Give us an example.
So it's on a commercial level, the retail price is approximately $200,000. We are working with the schools to offer discounts to the schools to try to get these installed soon, so we can have safe schools by the time the kids come back in the fall. But it depends a lot. There's a lot of different factors that go into a vestibule. Locking systems are one that can be very expensive. The amount of access the schools are looking to get from those doors. But it's a relatively affordable system when used in comparison to having active law enforcement at every school, and even the conversation of SWAT teams at schools has gone on. Those are much more expensive and recurring costs, where this is a one-time cost.
And what all types of bullets would this stop? Would this stop the so-called assault rifle bullets?
Yes, so our standard product offering is a level 5 UL listed product, and it will stop 5.56 rounds, it will stop 223 rounds, both of which are the predominant AR 15 rounds.
You can show, Jason, show them the rounds are on there. You can see the actual, the types of rounds.
So you can actually see actual fragments of lead in this. You can see the actual impacts of the bullets. When you feel this side, the glass is obviously rough and raw. When you feel this side, it's actually perfectly smooth. There isn't a single crack there. The reason that this one is black and that one is wood is when we did shoot this one, we shot all components of it. We shot the glass, we shot the stiles and rails, and obviously the bullets just blew the wood off of the sample. So we put it back together so it was presentable. This is what it would look like in a finished product. Again, warm and inviting, could be any species to match any decor at any school.
Is this installed in any schools now?
No.
Public buildings or any?
No.
What kind of places has it been installed?
So it's been installed in banks, courtrooms. We've recently completed projects like the Sherburne County Courthouse, Chisago County Courthouse. Really, sadly, until 5 or 6 weeks ago, nobody had ever contemplated even putting this into schools. It just wasn't part of our frame of reference. So as we work closely with schools, we're working currently with several school districts in Minnesota, also North Carolina, Wisconsin, to try to get the initial prototypes in. But again, they're all based on decades of experience we have doing other ballistic protection, virtually identical to this, just not in schools.
This is just for vestibules, or is this for all windows in a school building?
So that would depend a little bit on the school's worry level, I guess. Really what we've adapted for the initial rollout is 3 levels. One, we want to stop the person at the front door. Most of the statistics we've seen say that the shooter walks right through the front door. We want to stop them right there. The second level we would do would be classrooms. So we would do classroom doors. If you remember at Parkland, the one student was shot several times barricading the door with his body. These doors and these windows could be used in those classroom doors so that any shooter that tried to shoot that door, the person would be safe behind it. The last place would be fallback zones. These could be libraries, cafeterias, auditoriums, where we would custom build the different components to make safe areas, safe rooms, that kind of thing for students to flee to, teachers to get the kids into.
So that's in the case if the shooter makes it through the entryway, then there's a plan for safe places for people to go.
Yes, because every school is different. For instance, I went to Jefferson in Bloomington. That particular school building has multiple large vestibule entrances, so it's hard to protect all of those vestibules. In that case, we would probably want to try to funnel everybody through, but we would want to look at more at secondary defenses, whether it be the classroom doors or the auditoriums. Other schools, Big Lake is a great example, has a very straightforward front entry design. It would be very easy to protect that vestibule, then maybe less protection actually inside the school. Again, thinking that we would stop the shooter right at the front door.
This is really a case-by-case then, choices for schools to make based on how the school is designed and what you said their level of concern.
Yes. And one of the reasons we have Ryan on our team is he's an ex-Army sniper. Army Recon sniper. So what he does is helps us. When we look at a floor plan of a building, we say, you know, how would we tactically attack this building if we were going to be the shooter? And there's where we want to start to put in those barriers of defense. Schools don't often have a lot of that kind of experience in their background, so we're trying to help them with with what they might think are the needs and the best way to protect the students.
A question for the lawmakers there. It seems like most people agree that school safety is a top priority, but critics would say there's been reluctance on part of Republicans in particular to talk about gun reform. Why is that not a part of this conversation?
We are focused on something right now that can pass, and we're also focused on something that's actually going to help keep kids safe. We're education leaders here, and our jurisdiction is over the education budget, and we are laser focused on making sure that we have dollars that go to our schools and that safe school aid to make sure that the buildings, the facilities are safe. And also we have the people funds as well. But that has been our focus. And I'll just add that as it's been very clear here, every school building is incredibly different, what its needs are and how it can best keep its kids safe. And that's why the proposal that is working its way hopefully to the finish line here in the next few days, it actually gives that flexibility to our schools so they can do what type of safety measures they need to keep kids safe. And also there's included in there some funding for audits so school buildings can actually have a professional audit to look at their building and see what are the gaps, what are the holes, and how can we make kids safer. So I'm laser focused on something that's going to keep kids safe as soon as possible.
Well, while you're there, Senator,
Yes.
would your bill allow schools to pay for something like this? And would it be enough money for a school district? This is a little pricey. It was going to be $200,000 for one school. How far would that money go if they could use it for this?
Yes, the bills that have come off the Senate floor provide direct aid, Safe Schools aid to our schools. It's about, trying to recall off the top of my head here, I think it's about $20 million for Safe School aid. There's also some in the tails. Remember, this is not a budget year, so this is what we're looking at for 2019. There is a provision in the legislation, though, that would help money go further, and that's by allowing the Safe Schools money, whether it be the levy or the new aid that we're proposing, to be used to pay for bond debt. So school districts could continue. So we were trying to put all the tools in the toolkit that we can to make sure that our schools can work to make kids safe.
Is that enough for schools to actually purchase this type of product or something?
I'm sure it depends on the school. Every school is different. The aid goes out on a per pupil level. The numbers are still a bit in flux, as you know. But again, I just want to emphasize that the Senate Republicans are laser focused on safe schools and how can we make sure that those buildings are safe and that we have the safety people inside to help as well. So again, providing the maximum flexibility, allowing those dollars to be leveraged through bonding, and then know that we have another budget year coming up next year, which will be a full budget cycle.
Question for Mr. Horner. You said earlier that this was not intended necessarily for schools. Do you give us a little bit of a history of the company and what it sounds like you've generally secured buildings that were known as targets more than schools. Take us through that a little bit, please.
Yeah, so the company I own is called Aaron Carlson Corporation. We're a high-end architectural millwork company that's based in Northeast Minneapolis. We've been there since 1895. The types of buildings that we've previously secured are oftentimes judges' chambers, judges' desks, front desks at city-type buildings, Federal Reserve banks, those kind of things, where it needs to be safe, but it also needs to be beautiful. So it tailored its way very clearly into the idea that we shouldn't have schools feel like prisons. Meshed very well with what we had done in the past.
And we've talked about hardening up schools really since Columbine, but it sounds like until, what, Parkland, you didn't decide that you were going to take your company into this realm?
Well, we had started to move towards a more cost-effective modular-based system that didn't have to be custom designed at every level to fit individual needs. And It took us about a year, going through the patent process, through different design renditions, to get to something that really made sense. And it frankly just happened to time out with the events at Parkland.
How does the system perform against explosives, blunt force, shrapnel, those kind of things?
So blunt force, if you want to come over and touch and feel these, they're very heavy. They will withstand blunt force. Baseball bats very, very well. There is some relatively shallow data on blast resistance. The only real data we have is what we know we've done in the past, and we know how physically heavy the objects are. My personal belief is that if one of these systems was in place and somebody decided to bomb it, the likelihood that the door literally comes out of the opening and stays intact to some degree somewhere else in the building, I think is very high. I think the walls and the structure will fail before a lot of this will fail. But there's no conclusive data. There's been no testing that I'm aware of. So, one option when we started to talk about the money aspects of this, we realized that funding would be an issue right away as soon as we started into this. We actually set up a deal with a financing company that approved all Minnesota schools, or pre-approved all Minnesota schools, so that they could actually do this and then pay for it either out of operating budget or future funding from future bills. So we did take care of that problem for schools that wanted to move forward that may not have the money or may not be allocated the money.
You're saying they can pay over time or by bonding?
Yes.
10 more, otherwise?
Does anybody have a comment on the significance of the fact that we have to consider bulletproof glass to protect our kids in schools? Comment on that?
Well, I think it's a sad comment, quite honestly, that we're doing this, but we've got to live in the reality of today. It's not just, it could be, we've lived in a different world since 9/11, and I think you see it all throughout society. That it's not like, it's just not like it was 30 years ago. But what I appreciate about products like this, and I think Jason touched on it, is that we want our schools to be inviting, and we want our staff and students to feel safe. That's how they're going to learn. And that's what this type of product will the climate that it will create. We're not, I don't know that we're here talking about how violent the culture has become necessarily, but how do we keep our kids as safe as we can with the situations we're presented today.
Another school shooting today, this one in Santa Fe, Texas, with fatalities. Anybody want to comment on that? I mean, I know this is related to that in some degree, but sufficiency, given the scope of this issue, is this enough?
It's tragic and it's heartbreaking when we hear those type of things. I just heard that as I came in today. And our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts go out to the families and the communities and all those involved. But to the questions, the last couple questions, we do have to understand the world in which we live. And as I said, when I called law enforcement leaders across the state on February 15th, they all were in unison in their voice that we need to treat this just like we started hardening the target after 9/11. We made those cockpit doors bulletproof. And it's sad that we live in a society where we need to do this. But we must make sure that we have done everything possible to make sure that our school buildings are safe. I'm glad to see things like this that are already in process. And we hope that there are many opportunities for our schools to find those avenues that are best at helping keep kids safe. And so we're not going to tackle every problem in this world, but our job is to make sure that these school buildings, these are buildings that our kids go to, these are our government buildings. It is our job to make sure that we give local school boards the tools that they need to best make these buildings as safe as possible for our kids.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming in. If you have any other questions, Jason will be available afterwards. Feel free to take a look at the windows as well, but appreciate you coming this morning.
Thank you.
See you back in the bridge. I gotta run because I gotta do today.